Alistair Parren returns to the Masters for 2022, and no one was surprised to see him taking the greenskins. It's worked for him in the past, and it'll likely work again, not to mention the freedom of a board that hasn't put any pressure on them to achieve the impossible. Will it be impossible though? Let's see how they are going to try and do it. 4-3-3 is an aggressive lineup for the greenskins, and we'd expect no different. Cohesion is never really a thing for this army, but they will no doubt have a roaring crowd behind them, packed with those who didn't make the team and are hoping to see their teammates fail. The Goblin King may be placed in the goalkeeper slot, but you heard it right in the pre-tournament interviews. He considers himself the star player of the team and won't hear anything otherwise. Is it ego talking, or is he just as good as he says he is? Mr. Parren will be hoping for the latter. An unusually high amount of common orcs across Alistair's centre after he unashamedly dumped his feral orcs in place of these guys instead. Their selection is certainly under scrutiny, but the amount that there are of them will no doubt give them half the chance at least. Not all the ferals were dropped, these guys stayed in. Was it a clerical error, or was it the look they gave the training staff when the message of their comrades being dropped that caused the message to be ignored? 3 different witch doctors, 2 on chariots, means that this triumvirate of nastiness will be at opponents from all angles. There's another crystal ball in there somewhere too. But now we're seeing so many, has the novelty worn off? I say, probably not. If you need something big and made out of rock, why not bring in 2 of them? One carries Alistair's battle standard, and it won't be surprising to see these behemoths smashing their way to victory. Just in case the orcs in the middle receive some funny looks on the team bus, this bunch of greenskins brought in the heavy hitters as well. Plenty of them too. As far as weak cogs in the team, the Goblin Raiders know that it's them, but it won't stop them going at it like a rat on a sandwich and causing mischief when the time comes. Thumbs up for 2 git launchers, and with a field of targets to aim at, are we looking at this year's MVP of the team? No surprises that they came in, and it could be a really good decision doing so as well. No one told him that half his army are no longer ferals, but Alistair plans on slipping him that little memo right after round 1 deployment. You can expect a whole load of pain to ensue, even with that shiny new crown on this orc's head. No one denies that this team will be bringing a whole lot of hurt. Alistair will be hoping it also brings him a whole lot of success as well. With the biggest hashtag the 9th Age has ever known, hashtag Chayformaster is trending with record numbers on Twitter. However, there are still those claiming it will be hashtag Chaydisaster. Let's see how he lines up his team. 4-3-3 is not an unusual setup, especially when it comes to warriors who won't be playing deep with defense either. That's unless you mean it as deep in the opponent's deployment zone. It has all the right choices mixed in together, so what could possibly go wrong? Single characters doing everything could be considered a gamble, but with the amount of warriors Chay will have in front of this wizard general combination, you can't think this leader will be easy pickings. Another outing for the popular lightning van races as well? We are not surprised. Warhounds at fullback is about as talked about as Carl Walker at City these days, and their speed is about the same as well. Whether they realise they are surrounded by greatness making them look better is unknown. They're usually not around long enough to tell them. Feldrax! Last year at the Masters they were all the rage, and that hasn't really diminished. Not yet. Even the recent update hasn't swayed Chay from bringing a big unit of the hurt, and as the anchor to his lineup, it's a good start. Alongside them in the Central Defence Partnership is another mainstay of the Dark Gods, sporting a slightly different choice in greed rather than wrath. The internet went crazy when the details of their latest signed contract were revealed, as the numbers were soaring. But if you can get it, why not sign on that dotted line? Chosen chariots also have a familiar feel to them in the Warriors' army, as they very rarely let the side down. Chay will be looking for consistency across all his team, and with both flanks covered by these constructs, the zonal marking tactic speaks for itself. In the middle, a certain podcast raised eyebrows at the lack of favour choice taken here. According to our sources, their manager was furious at them for turning up late in training and stripped them of this feature. It remains to be seen whether it'll pay off, or if these zealots stumble back to the boss with their shields between their teeth. Warrior Knights have every reason to feel pleased with themselves as they've seen a lot of fan praise lately. Chay will be hoping they don't let their newfound pride get the better of them though, because everyone knows that the fans are fickle and a stray alchemy spell can always ruin the day. Fallen warriors simply don't care, and that's often what gets them slotted into an attacking position, as is the case here. They'll always go down swinging, expect the shot tally of the team to come initially from this direction, even if the rest of their teammates eventually catch up and surpass them. Then over to the most injury-prone unit in the game these days. Sometimes they're fully fit and will surge forward like they've nowhere else to be. On another day they pull a hammy at the mere mention of getting stuck in. I know the feeling. Hashtag Chay for Master is going strong, and anyone who tries to get in the way of it will quickly become a heat magnet of fan hatred. Or will that just be Matty P? And not an Asklander in sight either. What is there to say about a team that sports the reigning, defending, two-time Masters champion that hasn't already been said? He's been hogging the limelight for a long time now, but is it really his fault, or is he just that darn good? Changing the type of elves he brings to the table this year, let's see what he's got. 3-5-2 with 3 units all packed into the goalkeeper slot. The tale of Tom and Tim and the insane amount of horses they have in their stables is good to go. Craig will be hoping to duck behind some big performances here, despite already claiming that his chances this year have been reduced by some press leaks. Surely not. Whether they have Dread or Highborn in front of their names, it's not surprising to see these 3 line up on the field. Not to say they do the same as they did in the past for Craig. He has read that they have different rules to the previous book he used, hasn't he? When core selection becomes a case of pressing copy and paste 3 times, you have to wonder if the Twice Master is taking things seriously. But then, he usually wins anyway, so who are we to judge? If ever there was a part of this Dread Elf force who will try to deflect from their man in charge, it's these academy-trained newcomers. Having trained more elite stars than Southampton FC, we wonder if these latest units will show the same quality as is expected of them. Dread Knights will no doubt be feeling the weight of expectation that presses down on every unit playing for the Double Master. You'd think that their board of directors would be happy to take their foot off the gas, but apparently not. It's master or nothing, so they say. Speaking of tricks, on the opposite flank, one unit of ladies that would be sad to see Craig take up his threat of this being his last Masters before taking a break is the Acolytes. The abundance of Hand of Heaven on the table may find these girls a juicy target. You heard it here first. Another of the female units to grace our screens is these Gorgons behind the attack, proving in a trio that they aren't here for chaff, or are they? Honestly, with Craig, it's just hard to tell. The Selexian officer is another one out of training in the academy, but when they come out so talented, we wonder whether they aren't actually youth products after all. Strangely, considering we predicted a Hand of Heaven to ruin the Acolytes' days, Craig becomes another to take the anything you can do approach. It's good to see he is just a little bit human. Double Dread Prince, possibly called Tim and Tom, unless that was all just a joke that this reporter enjoyed all the same. It'll be hard not to see how much of a tear these two go on, knowing they've a real genius behind them. And that's that for the Double Master. Will we be talking about his units, his tactics, his trophy hoard, or will we just be saying, that's just what he does? Stay tuned to find out. When Ed Murdoch stands across the table, you can feel the prestige just dripping off of him as our FIFA representative. Will his team be shown the respect that their manager deserves? Let's take a look to find out. As far as normal formations go, playing a 4-3-2 setup is risky, but it won't be the only team that shuns the normal pitch spread in this tournament. The talking point has to be around the inclusion of the dark-hide managerial attire that Ed will be rocking on the sidelines. Such class on display, but what about his players? Honestly, we just love this model. Warhol takes the spotlight here. I have nothing more to say about this goalkeeping legend. Hellhounds in either fullback position are some of the few units that Ed actually has to deploy without some sort of shenanigans. They've had to adapt as their career has gone on. Once they were vicious strikers, but as the years went on they've slowly made their way back, still respected on either side of the fence. There are ways to counter the dark hide, of course, as our podcast friends have made quite clear. But when the team gets ready to kick off and neither of their centre-backs has even made it past the subs bench, you have to wonder if Ed has thought this one through. Another unit that can really move, even though it will be one of the first out, is these Veil Serpents. Once again, we should say that we have no idea how this unit will be used at the tournament. We could guess, but we'd probably be wrong. If Darkhide scouting is not your cup of whiskey, then normal scouting is in there too. Ed knows how to play to the crowd like the best of them. That winning smile is a wily one. Expect a decent amount of assists to come from this direction. At the centre and out from the start, Myrmidons won't be messing around like some of the rest of the army. According to their teammates, they'd never heard of social media, but that might just be because no one told the demons that no one uses MSN anymore. We struggle to say much about this team captain without mentioning their enormous pair of 7s in their offensive and defensive stat line. It won't be their only tricks though, as she too sports that dark hide, not that you'd know it, as well as a whole load of other fanciful effects that Ronaldo would be proud of. And we leave the last laugh for the player that could not have made more disruption if he tried. Singled out as the most negative influence on the locker room, many wonder if he would cause the team more trouble than harm if it weren't for the calm head that is Mr. Ninth Age Ed. If ever there was a player who we instantly forgive for taking the top-tiered army to the biggest tournament of the year, it's Ed Murdoch. No one would dare to say he couldn't be the one raising the trophy by the end, and with the demons, there's always a chance. If there was ever a claim that the number 23 held unusual features, Hristo would be the man to convince you of it. Or convince you against it, one or the other. Some say that he only had a few pages of the Dwarvenholtz book to choose from, but time will tell whether he'll be able to make that count. Clearly the magic page wasn't one available to him, and with this condensed 4-3-3, it really is all business for the Dwarves and Hristo. Mr. Bulgaria, yes, there are other team members apparently, has made threats that he'll be retiring for a changing career after this event. Could a Masters win convince him otherwise? Not knowing who to put in goal is a choice that a lot of Sunday League managers have in their time. This Thane BSB stands alongside his only other character, knowing that it's likely their presence will either be completely ignored or spat at when his rune of denial pops up at the least opportune moment. The other guy, well, he's just there to be captain, lead the warm-up and answer media questions at the end. We could have separated out Hristo's defensive lineup into 4 separate pictures, but we'd be lying to ourselves, and frankly, Brenda in photoshopping has gone on holiday for a week, so we combine it into one. I've previously been blasted on Twitter for using the point-and-click analogy for Warriors of the Dark Gods, so I'll upset the dwarfs here too. Copy, paste, point-and-click Kingsguard. Brenda didn't return in time for the midfield pick to be separated out either. At least we're being honest. One thing we won't be honest about is that we know the secret behind the numbers of these marksman units. Take that, Kev Stonebanks. But no, we won't be revealing it here. And when it comes to leading the line, you have to hope that the best choices for finishing have to do the job. Having been on the receiving end of this gun line in a recent and painful memory that my therapist won't let me talk about until the battle report comes out, I simply say no comment. You either love them and bring them to masters, or you hate them. It's really that simple for dwarves. Will it be a final hurrah for Hristo before he heads to pastures new, or will we tempt him to stay by letting his Kingsguard roll over the opposition? If ever there was a man at this tournament who put the training in behind the scenes, it's Hugh Scarlin. Some might wonder whether it's too soon for Kingdom of Aquitaine to be trusted to perform in this most important event, but if anyone can do it, it's the Master of Practice. Let's see how he plans to do it. 5-3-1-1 for Aquitaine is a style that Hugh has made work for him in the past. Whether it's one of his 3 or 4 workouts during the week or match day itself, his units will be expected to have worked out all their kinks, even if the book they come from certainly hasn't. A mounted Equitan Lord, interestingly, doesn't get the Sainted upgrade, perhaps one of the most popular early additions in KOE armies. He says without any statistics to back it up whatsoever. But where there is a Justice Knightly principle, you can be sure that Hugh will be expecting more than just goal kicks from this man at the back. Wingbacks really takes on a new meaning when your choice in that position has wings. Now that they have siblings elsewhere in the book to push for their position in the army, Hugh will be hoping that this pep talk makes them work extra hard for their points. With the newfound tax on gallantry, they really need to show what they can do, especially offensively. No one likes expensive chaff after all. One dissident member of the team posted anonymously that the Ordo Sergeants were sucking up to the boss like you wouldn't believe. Hugh doesn't care one bit for politics though. He brings 2 units of them as the handle to his lance. While we've put these chaps in the holding role, we all know there's not a lot these chaps can hold. We move on. Playing wingbacks just wasn't enough for Hugh. He wanted a sweeper too. Another gorgeous entry from Warhol on this one. The fact that no one really knows what it does is only part of its beauty. When we said earlier that the Ordo Sergeants were blasted by an anonymous source, we all know it was the feudal knights that were really behind it. Their place in the core lineup could never be more under threat. Every team needs a few workhorses, those who will regularly top the miles run chart, and just get on with the job. Hugh's men-at-arms might be those troops, but with a hard reset on all of KOE's history lessons, we'll tell you after round 5. Knights Resplendent look so good that you almost forget what they might be replacing from the old book. Maybe. We're not really sure. Just don't let them get charged, speaking from what a friend told me. Someone hid this man's water bottle as he was warming up. Or was that his horse? Pretending he's not bothered whatsoever, this on-foot lord waves his flag around as though the practical joke was completely intended. Bless him. Speaking of blessing, we're not sure what she's spotted up there, but her army is ready to surge forward at Hugh's command. Shamanism isn't the most interesting of choices for her, but it's a reliable choice, and Mr. Scarlin will be looking for exactly that from his damsel. We were rather surprised to see only 1 KOE entry into the Masters, but when it's being commanded by Hugh, it could surely go far. We have breaking news for you with this next one, folks. We have been told that Jak Payne has recently stepped down from Team England, and we have the reason. It's... Hang on, that just says insert reason here. Well, that's not breaking news. On with the team focus. Another 4-3-3 approach. As is tradition, Warriors know what they do, and considering last year's second-placed Masters finisher has been drawn to face off with last year's winner in round 1, they'll need to get on with it quickly. Exalted heralds sit in one of many camps. You like them, you don't. You take them, you don't. Jak has brought one. With the newfound tax on legendary beasts, Jak looks for his captain choice to rally a demoralised army into moving into the new year with a different approach. Poor Kev thought he'd see the end of the Lost Warriors. He hasn't. Assuming he draws Jak at some point, that is. Or possibly other warrior lists. A centre-back pairing that everyone knows about now. You can expect a few yellow cards from these two, as opposing strikers look to wind them up at every opportunity. Jak's last press appearance left reporters bemused when he refused to answer the question about whether giants are crap or not. 2 tribal war spears and 5 rounds of masters later, maybe we'll ask him the question again. Poor chimeras, they don't have much love these days, not even getting to use their wings on most occasions anymore. However, they've taken not being included in the Champion League squad of legendary beasts remarkably well, and look to these 2 flanking monsters to do whatever they can to stick it up to the doubters. Jak goes with 5 chosen knights as his centre brick. No one blames him, this unit just never underperforms, except for that League Cup 3rd round match against Stalybridge that we're not allowed to talk about anymore. Insert a number of your choosing for how legendary this beast is. He'll be aiming to keep as quiet as possible while also smashing as many opposing units as he can. Is a turn 1 charge on the cards for Jak's gigantic beastie. An interesting choice of 9 barbarian horsemen that this reporter just can't put his finger on. But that could be because he's down at 80 in the rankings, so the less said about that, the better. Evocation isn't a surprising choice here. Oh, and look at that. Whatever he's seen in the sky must be his crystal ball. How he can tell it from everyone else's, I just don't know. Jak knows what he's doing with warriors, whereas other veteran Masters generals have swayed into different armies. Last year he was the bridesmaid. Will this year be the wedding of the dark gods for Jak? It's impossible not to start this team sheet review without saying that COVID has swept through the ID camp in the last few weeks, alongside some reports of vassals being coerced into submitting negative test results in place of the more senior team members. Surely just false speculation, of course. On to the formation and player focus. The Infernal Dwarfs will almost certainly line up in a 4-4-1-1 formation that is very heavily focused on what they can do in their centre. With 5 of their 11 positions set up in numbers of 20, you have to wonder whether the other units missed the memo. The prophet in between the sticks is arguably the backbone of the team. They'll be looking for good communication from the veteran here. You can be sure you don't want to get in the way of that rod of battle either. These two have been playing alongside one another for seasons. You know what you're getting when you see these two at the back. One with blunderbusses, one with pistols. Both can hurt you if you don't give them enough respect, that's for sure. The unbreakable infernal engine at fullback is one of their most accomplished units. Not a lot gets past this guy, and when he goes full steam ahead, there isn't much it can't achieve. No surprise seeing this fella in the lineup at all. Another prophet on the other fullback slot, slightly more generic though this one. That's apart from the Kadim Peace Chariot tattoo he keeps showing off to the crowd. This centre has to be considered their strongest position. You've got to think the team's success will depend on whether these guys succeed or fail. One of the most talked about units in a book full of controversial topics, Jake wisely stays neutral as he throws them into the fray. A lot of the fans are saying it's their wide positions that are the weakest, and when these guys line up you just have to wonder. Then again, with good direction from the sidelines, assuming they listen to their instructions, even these chaps could play a massive part in the team's fortunes. Yet another prophet, making 3 in total, but this one is undoubtedly their captain, and it's good to see him stood alongside his most senior team member as they warm up. Only days ago, social media reported a training ground bust-up between their 2 most capable players, but as they stand together now, you have to think that's all behind them. Insignificant is about as exciting as it gets for these guys on the other flank. Not a lot else to say. And finally, right up top, some would say with a big job to do, the gunnery team will need the right targets and a bit of luck to lead the firing line. You just know that the infernal engine won't let these chaps take the limelight. And there we have it, folks, your infernal dwarf lineup. Will it be flesh roasting on the open fires of industry, or will it be a crash and a COVID-induced burn? Jeff Keeling is known as the Smiling Assassin, but it has to be said that we've not seen him on the scene anywhere near as much as we would have liked to this calendar year. Despite that, when Jeff does come to play, he's proved time and again that he does so to good effect, and is back for another Masters. Time to focus on this horde of an army to see how he'll be doing it. If Jeff tries to call this formation 4-4-2 in the press conference, it's likely he's hoping we'll not pick up on his double unit placement, so consider it not mentioned. Sometimes when you're trying to do football comparisons with the 9th Age, you've just got to give me a break. So Jeff's team captain is this beast lord somewhat surprisingly on a chariot. Will he be hoping that amongst all the other threats he goes unnoticed? That is until he unloads a whole lot of hurt on whoever ignores him, until it's too late. Alongside him there was clearly a sale on at Smith's Toys, because yet another chariot gets the nod for Jeff's characters. Considering we weren't allowed into the training centre to see them practicing before the event, we really don't know how this is going to play out. 3 raiding chariots at either fullback position should mean that Jeff has the zonal marking in place to defend most corners, and also a long throw specialist as well. When someone was said to ask who has that many chariot models painted, Jeff replied, well, that would be me. When Breakthrough comes up, you almost expect that the Longhorns have been waiting for their chance. The super subs of the 9th Age world will hope they are put onto the field at just the right time, because we all know what happens if the subs are brought on too late now, don't we? More raiding chariots. We've run out of things to say. And again, oh wait, this one's a Razor Tusk chariot. The team bus driver making that request for an immediate loan move makes sense now that you see how many of Jeff's players made their own way to the event. This soothsayer's mount is not a chariot. No, we're just kidding, of course it's a chariot. Considering how many options Jeff had to give tricksters cunning to, this chap gets the nod, and with shamanism in tow, you can't dispute the choice. Minotaurs in units of 3 make up one half of the midfield centre. The bookies are refusing to take bets about whether these guys will top the chart of the most sliding tackles in round 1. It's just expected. Elsewhere we have another unit that is more suited for the subs bench, but will be looking to take its chance. The banner of discipline they've been trusted to carry is either a mark of respect Jeff has handed over for one of his more experienced players, or because he just doesn't trust them. You choose which. However, one area of the pitch that won't be disciplined is up top with the Centaurs. 2 units of 6, again suspiciously crammed into one pitch position, raises eyebrows as often as they raise their tankards. Jeff's route to the Masters may be one where less is more. You're welcome for that 19-1 victory over me at Scottish Masters, by the way, Jeff. But no one would be surprised to see all smiles for the lowest tier army under Jeff's control. If anyone can do it for them, it's him. Or will it be Kev? Well, hang on, we haven't recorded Kev's yet. Josh Burns takes command of our only Sylvan Elf entry into the Masters this year, and if anyone was wondering what army he'd be bringing, they shouldn't have. It was always going to be Sylvans for Josh. Inexperience could be the crucial factor for this team, as it's their first appearance at the Masters. But, amongst others in the same positions, Don't think this will be only a relegation dogfight. Let's see how they line up. As far as Sylvans go, it's a little unorthodox, with a holding midfielder and a key role in front of the imposing-looking back three. 4 across the middle will look to work in perfect Sylvan symmetry, while Josh trusts in his elven characters up front to bang in the goals. The Forest Prince is in a commanding position in the last line of defence, but don't be fooled because this guy can move. He won't be easy to pin down, and if he doesn't end up eating a cannonball, expect good things from the elf in the skies. Another team member that you can't expect to stay disciplined in defence for long, mainly because if they do they'll be shot, is the Wild Huntsman. Rightly feared by most opposition, whoever comes up against them will be hoping they pick up a knock in the warm-up stretches. The Treat Father has to be the team's most famous player. Never leave home without him, and Josh certainly won't, not this weekend at least. On the other side, there was some controversy for the general avatar of nature, some doubting his leadership capability after handing in transfer request just moments before the tournament. It all turned out to be a big misunderstanding, swiftly rectified by the league authorities, and Josh's momentary panic can be left in the past. Heath Riders may be an unusual choice for the holding role, but in a Sylvan Elf army they're as good as any. When their defence all goes flying past them, this is the unit you can expect to be staying back for corners. That's unless they're already dead. Briar Maidens make up both flanks as you'd expect, not one of the most iconic members of the team, and certainly not the ones you'd find gracing the nightclubs of Soho either. These girls have a job to do. When it comes to who Josh will hope can prove their stuff, it's these ladies who he'll be looking to step up before he gets stepped on. Sylvan Archers are a trusty addition to the side in the middle, and you can be sure that whenever things aren't looking great, Josh will be rallying around these chaps in order to reassess his options. You wouldn't exactly call them locker room leaders, but they'll do what they do, and maybe that's enough. Chieftain BSB has got into some trouble lately, claiming he wanted the team to focus more on their own strengths rather than avoiding the ball. An outrageous statement, all things considered, but he keeps his place despite the heat. Last, but hoping not to be least alongside all the other casters in the team, the Druid Cosmo Master is another wielder of a crystal ball. For Josh and the Sylvans, there really isn't anything to lose for the newcomer. Expect the unexpected, mainly because it's Sylvans, and no matter what else happens, it'll be unpredictable. Kev Stonebanks shot to stardom last year with the release of his nudist calendar. However, the latter part of the year saw it shouted down as being a fake, somewhat reducing the impact it had on the crowd. In response, the Paired Weapon Podcast superstar turned instead to air guitar, and are we glad to see it. But enough of all that, we have a team focus to talk about. Hang on, what on earth is this, Kev? Is this a 5-5-1-2-1 formation? Someone get Kev on the phone. His agent has really done it this time. Kev's appearance at the Masters last year was akin to seeing that team you've never heard of getting promoted to the top league, with every little bit of success leaving a nice warm fuzzy feeling. This year he brings a giant in goal with a beer barrel. We can see how success has gone to his head. There's a couple of interesting choices from Mr. Stonebanks, and having a soft spot for the Razortusk herd means we couldn't possibly disagree. Looking like all he needs is an air guitar, the Briar Beast is another one who wasn't expected. However, when interrogated on the subject, Kev simply replied that they were so cheap that it was worth a punt. Matty P, eat your heart out. Mongrel Raiders can hardly be relied on in defence, but when you've got a flat back 10, it might not matter. Another couple of entries into Super Sub territory. Kev will be looking to make a double change at just the right moment, and with the numbers on their side as well, it'll give him a good chance. Here we go, as Lucky Sixes would say, Minotaurs. In some ways, we didn't see enough of these last year, so Kev doubles their number and tries again. Whether they will house their beloved character duo for long, or at all, remains to be seen. Raid, Raid! Raid! I'm sorry, I got distracted. Perhaps this is why there's a razor-tusk herd at fullback, because one of them had to pull this chariot into the wing slot. We all know I'm talking out of my ass, it's just about the hunting horn. Mr. and Mrs. Mino, they deserved a picture separately, but considering Kev broke all the financial fair play awards with his formation, they'll just have to settle for being inseparable. Mr. Mino strikes fear into the hearts of most defenders, it's easy to see why. Mrs. Mino, on the other hand, may be slightly less of a beast, but only slightly. Which one of this partnership made in heaven is Kev, and which one is Matty P? You decide. 5 gargoyles can't compare to a picture of the most iconic couple in the 9th Age. We move on. Just so Jeff Keeling didn't get the only pair of ambushing longhorns at the tournament, Kev calls this his opening bid. This could escalate into a war that only a non-league team with the next big thing on their books could possibly enjoy. Finally, a soothsayer sporting the seed of the Dark Forest. Well, it's one kind of seed. Moving past the outright cheating with the formation, Kev definitely has the hearts of the fans when he comes to the table. But just in case he needs a bit of extra motivation, didn't Matty P say something about finishing above him in most of the events last year? You're welcome, Matty. Back to you in the studio, boys. This next team is the people's favourite to be sure, as the last man standing not to give up on undying dynasties. Their manager, Luke Williams, has a great history with Team New Zealand, taking them to good success as well. Some teams, playing only 3 at the back, run the risk of getting exposed, but not these guys, as they arguably have their strongest units right there. It gets a little shaky in the middle, to be sure, but while one flank offers support, the other brings terrifying devastation. The remaining players in the team lead from the front. Let's see what they've got. In goal, 5 halberds are ready to catch whatever the enemy has to throw at Luke's team, not to mention the biting and the poison and the... you get the idea. There aren't many more imposing sights than a Colossus, that's kind of the point. So when there's 2 of them, it's double danger. Don't let this big axe fool you. Reports were leaked from their training ground that neither of these meanings are sporting one. Slicing and dicing is much more likely, and when you look like that, why not? Skeleton chariots are a staple of this army, and they've not been cast aside by Luke for very good reason. Expect the fans to really get behind these guys, and opponents to need to watch carefully in order to avoid an impactful surprise. The Tomb Harbinger on one flank isn't quite as deadly as his counterpart on the other wing, but he'll be there to support the team with his communication skills. Some would say he's a future captain in the making. Others wouldn't. But for now, it's unsurprising that their well-known captain stays in his role for this big event. The Godslayer Great Weapon will leave nothing in its wake if Luke gets the opportunity to deploy it to full effect. Cower in fear at your peril. As we get to the centre, there's no dressing up that these step-ups from the youth team are there to do their part, and not a lot more. The Scorpion Tail in the background, unfortunately, not part of their arsenal. Similarly, Shabti archers might do something, but they might not. A unit of skeletons is one way of filling out the rest of Luke's core allocation that all teams qualifying for Europe have to adhere to these days. Always the gent, this general won't complain when it comes to lack of option, as is the safest place for these folks. Not that we're saying they will go there, that's for Luke to decide. Not a lot of variety in these other players, but they bring to the pitch a wealth of knowledge only dead guys that have been underground for decades possibly can. Described as a possible dark horse for the event, expect that if these chariot wheels get rolling, we could be seeing Luke's name not far from the top. Being a veteran with what's in front of you could well take him and his team far, but how far is the question. One of only 3 players in the Masters this year to have beaten me. Don't mention I've only played against 4 of them. Wait a minute, that wasn't meant to be on the auto cue. Anyway, my first ever competitive tournament opponent brings highborns to the table, and I'll stop making this all about me now, I promise. Mark was a playing position short when he submitted his team sheet, going with an unorthodox 3-4-1-1 formation. When he was asked about this, he replied, "I've got an ancient dragon," and seemed to think that this was a valid answer, so let's see what else he's got. Or maybe not. We're starting with the ancient dragon then. With nothing more than an obsidian rock and a weapon he calls Kingslayer, Mark's ancient dragon is nothing short of terrifying. The problem is that the dragon knows this, and it will come as no surprise if a transfer request doesn't come in immediately after the tournament, if Mark doesn't qualify his team for Europe. We doubt that they'll line up like this, but you never know. Either side of what could be considered a shaky defence, we asked Mark for a statement and he replied, "I've got an ancient dragon." If one side of the back 3 is shaky, the other side most certainly is not. Apparently someone knocked on the door of a long-abandoned tower and woke up some swordmasters for this tournament. As a team member, Elaine Reavers are okay. As a single centre-back, this team could leak goals. A Flame Phoenix makes up part of the 4-strong midfield, and with a Warden's Bond as well, it may come down to a few dice rolls to determine this birdie's effectiveness. Don't be fooled into thinking Catclaw is making an appearance, but Mark will be hoping for a similar fan-favourite performance out of this construct. With plenty of multi-wound Griblies in the tournament, it could be a perfect opportunity for them with no other Lion Guard units in sight. Mark's choice to bring no less than 10 Grey Watchers could be considered a bit of a surprise. We'll see how he comes to use them, and whether they'll suffer from big match nerves. Either way, Fey Miasma could be akin to the Magic Sponge if it works out. As generic as they come, this mage, but don't tell him that. We heard that in training the top penalty taker was in fact what you're looking at now. Maybe that warrants an inclusion on its own. Similarly to our other highborn elf list in the tournament, a big chunky unit of highborn lancers graces Mark's core setup. Interestingly, these ones even sport a rending banner, which throws all sorts of confusion about what they're going to use it, how, on whom, who he's going to charge with them. It certainly won't help them much in the grind. Lastly, playing as a lone striker in what may turn out to be a long ball approach is that tower upgrade once again, and we simply aren't surprised. Not only that, but this one comes armed with a Book of Arcane Mastery as well. 2 big bandanas on a real Maradona of a player. No one doubts Mark's credentials as a top player, and a place in Team England certainly shows that. Let's not forget that Helves are the holding champions as well, so will Mark not only be the cat with the cream or the tuna, maybe he'll have the trophy too. If any player other than Mikey said that they were bringing vampires to the Masters, it would probably raise eyebrows. As it is, no one doubts for a second as the team here plays for its manager, and vice versa. Let's move over to the formation to see who got the gaffer's nod into the first team. In the build-up, we did wonder whether we wouldn't get a look at Mikey's setup until round 1 began, but in a shock move, Mikey broke the media silence and revealed everything that nearly brought the internet down, such was the surprise. Another thing that didn't cause anywhere near as many questions as you'd expect was that he chooses up to line in a 3-5-1. It's bold, but then again, it's Mikey. Zombies for goalkeeper should be the next version of jumpers for goalposts if you ask me, but you didn't ask me, so instead you're just getting a whole load of zombies in goal and that'll have to do. Getting more vicious now, and this unit of 8 vampire spawn has gained prestige ever since they were found not guilty of being responsible for eating all the pies. As a part of a back 3, having frenzy amongst them could be the making and breaking of this army. On the other side, we have to say that this new signing was not expected to be granted a work permit in time to play. Perhaps they weren't expecting much in the way of flaming attacks on the field, and considering the lack of flaming standards, or pyromancy, it could have pulled off really well. Phantom Hosts received a big boost in the media when it was revealed that the foreign audience is in support of this selection. We can't wait to see how it turns out. The second biggest unit to come to the Masters is this unit of ghouls. If they get boosted by the Court of the Damned as well, then they could have the biggest footprint to appear on the pitch. That's until the TO sorts out the overhead blimp, anyway. Skeletons complete the set of core infantry for Mikey's Vampire Covenant. I've forgotten which position on the pitch we're talking about now though, such is the chemistry between all the players that have made it into the starting lineup. Now I remember, we're onto the flanks. Bat Swarms are considered by a reliable source to be the second best chaff in the game, but then considering two highborn elf players haven't taken what I consider the best chaff in the game, maybe we should all be ignoring that last statement. Dire Wolves on the other flank do what they're expected to do, which is probably die horribly. However, they do have a champion, and as this is the Masters, we don't need to tell any of the players that this could be the real reason they are on the board. Once again, this is another beautiful entry from Warhol that just needs to be admired for what it is. The days of the bar of soap are long gone. We'll get back to talking about Mikey and the Masters in a minute. A trifecta of vampires playing up top can't really be considered a single entry into Mikey's offensive capability, but the idea of them standing next to each other was too good to miss. Nosferatu and blood magic, not to mention a binding scroll and a crown of autocracy. This vampire count has all the makings of a golden boot winner. Carrying the battle standard may not be a glamorous role in an army that takes less discipline tests than most, but it could prove a very nice addition in a bind. If that's not enough, a vampire with armor? Who'd have thought it? The whole army exudes good preparation and a master plan. Will it be a master plan that brings Mikey the Masters, though? One of the more concise armies is up next, and one that offered us a huge surprise in regards to who was leading them. Last year's winning army should mean they are a good choice anyway, but all sorts of controversy have surrounded a choice that will be looking to let its dice rolling do the talking. A simple 3-4-3 formation with ordnance covering the front and cavalry on the wings is Tanka's obvious choice to line up with. There's a surprising amount of points in a few units, but with the recent appointment of their manager to Team England, will it affect his team's focus going into the biggest event of the year? Let's take you through it. Some say that a certain upgrade is slowly becoming untakeable, but others, well, they just take it. To say that this team is a one-man show would be considered praise that he'll gladly eat up, so just don't say it. A transfer embargo put onto the team shortly before the manager's arrival can be the only explanation for the inclusion of units that fans have long considered to be low on morale. Despite that, their previous reputation cannot be ignored, and this could well be what steals the show. If ever there was an auto-include in the team, the ladies would be quick to point out that the lads are nothing without their wags. Don't expect them to stay in the formation the graphic shows them in here, they just never do as they're told. Ella and Reavers have a tough job in the team, and they usually find themselves on net duty as well. But someone's got to do it, and these highborns, it will always be them. Slightly more upgraded than Reavers, but some people's bugbear unit, eyes will be focused on what this unit of Lancers can bring to the pitch. There's not much more to say for a unit that will always be hanging around the team sheet or warming up eagerly on the bench. This could be their chance. One of the largest units taken in the tournament graces Tanka's centre, and that wall of pointy things even has spears too. If opponents don't lose their eyes on the sharp parts of their ears, that war banner practically built for them will ensure their weapons do the job instead. This setup isn't unusual with the other characters in the team, as a bit of a shuffle up in tactics followed a recent change to pitch dimensions. What the prince gained, the commander lost. Or something like that anyway. The mage has long been pushed to the background because of the tower upgrade, but Tanka still deemed this one worthy of a go. In case there weren't enough pointy things in the army, expect a few more here. In a field graced with juicy targets, it's no surprise whatsoever to see all three lining up like they've never been away. And they probably haven't. Could it be the highborn elf reign of terror continuing under the leadership of England's captain? Picked out of the draw first, is it a sign of things to come? Tom Clews has had to have 6 months off with injury in the past year, not an ideal preparation to say the least. But despite that, his appearance in the Masters is well justified, and there are many looking forward to seeing what he can do. What shape will they take? An illegal one by football standards, 4-4-3-1 by the looks of it. However, it looks like a well-rehearsed free kick routine straight off the training ground, so we'll let it go and dig into what's there. A Feldrak Elder with a great weapon is a bit of a novelty, as if Strength 6 AP3 wasn't enough already. Tom has a plan for this guy. Let's just hope he showed in the team chalkboard before sending him out to play. Another giant gets the nod into a Masters team, so they clearly have some love left for them. Are the top players in England behind the times, or is it just something others are missing? 5 rounds to go before we find out. A sorcerer and a chosen lord, both on chariots, could be forgiven for thinking they've stumbled into the beast herd's dressing room. Once again, it looks like Tom Clews has a plan in mind for what they are set to do. Could it be an early sign of a man-marking approach? One unit that won't be man-marking is these warhounds. They'll likely be dead far before they figure out which man is safest to mark, but it'll do a job along the way. Warrior knights on the other side of midfield are a much more reliable talent, especially as in the qualifying matches they claim to be the leading scorers, although strangely no one else has seen their stats. More Lust Warriors. Sorry, Kev. 15 barbarians are likely to be 15 dead men walking before their sorcerer goes down. However, these reports are not going to start predicting which character deploys in which unit now, so don't hold us to it. The flayers flanking the attack are the perfect choice for mopping up whatever the strikers can't handle, but looking at the next entry into this unit focus, that might not be completely accurate. Because the next entry has probably never even spoken to the flayers in training, let alone let them mop up what he doesn't obliterate. The halberd supernatural dexterity combination might be a sign of a tight wage budget in the Clews camp, but we won't mention it to this guy's face. Will he be in the barbarians? Go on, Tom, do it just for me. Honestly, you don't have to. I don't know what I'm talking about. Another army roundup completed, and the most popular army at the event stands strong before you. Intimidating? Yes. Brutal? Yes. Tom Clews for master? Question mark.